Hey guys, it's Bryony. So today I'm going to be debunking 5 menstrual cup myths for you. If you're not familiar with what a menstrual cup is, feel free to check out my videos down below. I have lots of in-depth videos talking about everything you could possibly want to know about menstrual cups. Very quickly though, here is a menstrual cup I have right here in my hands. A menstrual cup is basically an alternative to using a tampon. Rather than absorbing the menstrual blood, it collects it and then you empty it out, wash it and reinsert it and sterilize it at the end of your cycle. So moving on to myth number 1. You can't use a menstrual cup if you're a virgin. This is definitely a myth. I was a virgin when I first used one of these. I was 15, I still am now actually, and I'm 19. I've never had a problem with using a menstrual cup. I know girls as young as 11 and 12 who use menstrual cups no problem, so it really is just a case of when you personally feel ready to use one. The way this myth came about is because of the link between virginity and your hymen. So the hymen is a thin bit of skin, often kind of like a spider web. It's not a solid piece of skin, it's got little holes in it that covers the entrance to or is just inside your vagina. And it's often associated with virginity because we think of virginity as being like heterosexual sex. The first time a man and woman have penetrative sex, we talk about losing your virginity. But virginity is just a word and some people don't even like using it. So for the sake of this, applying it to the heterosexual relationship, virginity being the first time that a man and woman have sex, sometimes the girl will bleed a little bit, and it's because the hymen will tear if you're not relaxed enough or lubricated enough instead of stretching, which causes a little bit of blood. It's also associated sometimes with being painful, but not everyone has this, and the hymen can actually tear doing many other things like riding a bike or running down the road. You may have already torn your hymen and not even realize it, and some people are actually born without it in the first place. So this is how this myth came about. Also tightly linked to this myth is the myth that if you use a menstrual cup and you tear your hymen, you're no longer a virgin. Like I said before, the word virgin just refers to someone who hasn't had sex. It is not at all officially linked to the hymen. We just tend to link it to that because we think of sex as being this painful and, you know, hymen tearing the first time you have sex. But actually, if you're well lubricated and you have enough foreplay, you might not have any pain at all. Myth number 2, the TSS risks with a menstrual cup are higher. So TSS stands for toxic shock syndrome. It's something associated with tampons. It's a potentially fatal illness that basically is caused by a bacteria called staph bacteria. Its full name sounds very funny. It's called Staphylococcus aureus. It's the same staph bacteria that's associated with MRSA, and it's particularly difficult to treat. I believe MRSA stands for methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus. So that's often associated with hospitals. So Staphylococcus bacteria is quite difficult to treat, and hence the reason they have to put on tampon packages the risks of what can happen. Basically, if you put a tampon in and you start feeling unwell, you get high temperature or fever, you notice rashes on your hands or anything, and especially pain. Basically what it does is it poisons the blood and it starts to shut down your organs. Do read the leaflet inside of your tampon box if you are using tampons. It's very important you know what TSS is. And the first thing you should do is immediately take the tampon out and go to hospital. It's a serious illness and you need to get treated for it. So some people think that there's a higher risk associated with menstrual cups, but this is a myth. There's actually a much lower risk. There's never been a case of TSS officially associated with a menstrual cup. There was one case where a woman got TSS after using a menstrual cup, but she actually scratched herself internally with her nail while she was doing it. So it wasn't actually the cup itself, more the act of tearing the inside a little bit, which I've personally never done. And I think if you have short enough nails, or actually some people with long nails use menstrual cups no problem as well. But certainly if you're careful, you shouldn't have this problem, and it's a very small chance. But yeah, it's much lower than using a tampon because menstrual cups are made from usually medical grade silicone and they're basically non-absorbent, whereas a tampon is made from really absorbent rayon fibers that can get left behind when you take them out. Menstrual cup, everything that's on here comes out with you. You don't get any of that dry sandpapery feeling that you can get when you remove a tampon too soon, which was the most awful feeling ever. I can remember it vividly, I hated it. You don't get that with this, and also you don't have as high risk of TSS. So actually the risks of TSS go down dramatically when using a menstrual cup. Myth number 3, you can't use a menstrual cup if you have an IUD. This is not true. Many women with IUDs do use menstrual cups, although it is a good idea to ask your doctor to trim the strings of your IUD a little bit shorter, just because it is possible for them to catch, and when you pull the menstrual cup out, you must make sure you break the suction properly before, otherwise you could potentially pull your IUD out. Although it's very rare, I haven't actually heard of it ever happening, it is something that could potentially happen, so just a good idea to make sure that your strings are a little bit shorter. Myth number 4, it could get lost. Your vagina isn't a black hole. I seem to say this all the time. Inside your vaginal canal, there is your cervix, and there is no way this thing is getting through your cervix. The only time your cervix is going to get wide enough for this thing to come through is when you're having a baby, and that's because the baby is pushing out. You would not be able to push one of these things into your cervix. If you should happen to insert your menstrual cup and you have a high cervix, which means you can insert your finger and not feel your cervix, that we tend to classify as a high cervix. It might be that the cup has migrated up. The best way to get your cup out here is to squat down and bear down with your muscles as if you're going for number 2. You should find the end of the stem here, just pull it gently, walk the cup down, and then you'll be able to grip it out and take the cup out. But no, your cup can't get lost. As I said before, your vagina isn't endless. And myth number 5, menstrual cups are gross. This is obviously personal preference in some ways, but I would definitely say menstrual cups aren't gross, taking into account that in North America alone, I'm afraid there are no statistics for the UK at this moment in time, but in North America alone, roughly 1 billion pads, tampons and applicators go into landfill every year, and because they contain plastics that take hundreds of years to break down, that means your blood is going to be sitting on a lovely pad or on a lovely tampon in a landfill site for hundreds of years, breaking down, having bacteria feasting all over it. And also, fun fact, pads and tampons aren't sterilised, contrary to what most people think. In fact, if you go to Japan, you'll not be able to find brands like Always or Tampax because their bacteria levels are too high for the Japanese high standards to sell them. So the pads and tampons you're using right now are currently covered in bacteria, and that's your hygienic pads version. Whereas a menstrual cup, and actually cloth pads as well, you can sterilise. You boil it every month, you can sterilise, you can completely control where it has been and what it has on it. Well, to a certain extent, obviously everything has bacteria to a certain extent. But yeah, you can sterilise these, whereas you can't sterilise a tampon or a disposable pad, because obviously you'd have to get them wet and then they would be useless. Just some food for thought. But I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. I hope you found it helpful. Please subscribe. Don't forget you can get menstrual cups and cloth pads from my website, Precious Stars, down below. And I will see you next week. Bye-bye.